When I was in high school, back in Plainfield, Illinois, we had this substitute teacher that was kind of a character. He was famous among the students. His name was Doc Levick, or just Doc for short. And we called him that because he had a PhD in chemistry and decided to be a substitute teacher at a high school for, I don't know, fun, I guess. But when you walked into the class and saw him there that day, subbing for whatever subject you were in, this tall, gray figure, he put off this kind of Christopher Walken-like vibe. You knew it was going to be a fun class. He was known for proposing and debating, sometimes for the entire period, a rather odd question. Are rocks alive? That was the question. The students loved to make fun of him for this because, of course, rocks aren't alive, right? He would respond back to them, well, how do you know? They're made of atoms, which are moving. They're born or formed, so to speak, and they change with time, albeit over millions of years. So how do you define alive? The question became legendary at Plainfield High School. One day in class during my junior year, after being kind of poked and prodded over the debate by some of the students, Doc revealed maybe what I would say is the true meaning or purpose of that question for all those years. He put that question out there to challenge us. What exactly makes us alive and rocks not? There are so many mysteries we still don't understand about the subatomic world, consciousness, and even life itself. Doc said that in all of his years teaching and studying science, if just one of his students would devote their lives to trying to answer that question and get anywhere even close to an answer, the discoveries that they would make along the way would change the world forever. Today's episode focuses on the subject of consciousness. It's a frontier that lives inside of our own heads, and we know so little about it. The very state of our being is a question that philosophers and scientists have tried to answer for thousands and thousands of years, and frankly, they all came up with nothing. We can't see it, measure it, explain it. We don't even have a good definition for it. So what is it? Stay tuned and enjoy. Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Redacted podcast. My name's Matt Bender. We have Pamela back there. She's manning the audio board, keeping all the secrets and making us all look good and sound good here. And we have our guest here today who's been so gracious to come on our show and share some experiences with us that she's had and some knowledge that she's had. So where you kind of approached me from, or where you came to want to be on the show, was that you wanted to share both knowledge you have and experiences you've had with extraterrestrials.
Yes, sure. Because one of my passions is to be able to help people start to kind of make that transition to this being more common. And it really is just kind of hidden under the blanket.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm really happy to share.
People know stuff about this and they've had experiences, and sometimes they're maybe afraid to speak up. I know especially in the past, it was like, oh, that's loony.
Yeah.
That's loony. This is loony. And now I think we're getting so much more information and legitimacy. And as you see, these scientists and, respected people coming out with it and these documentaries being made, and, even the Pentagon and the White House have been talking about it.
Right.
And that may be something else weird and different. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the fact that now it seems a little easier
to
share. And we'd like to get your story, and I think it's important to hear as many different kind of perspectives on it as possible, and to get it from real people.
Yeah.
Because we've heard a lot of, the celebrities and the different big people in the community over the years talking about this. But what's the average person, so to speak, the non-celebrity, the non, public figure?
Sure.
Think about it. So where did it kind of start for you?
When I was a child, I was very aware, you could say, of that there was something in the invisible, but I didn't know how to explain or describe. I would say my first memory of something very odd that I didn't realize until much later in my life was part of this process I'm going through of this awareness about all that's been going on with me.
Yeah.
Was about when I was between 5 and 6.
Oh, wow.
And I remember looking out a window. There was a heater.
Like a radiator?
A radiator that I was standing on to see out my window. And I had my nightgown on. And there was nobody in the room. And I used to love to look out the window all the time. I just remember.
Yeah.
I used to look out the windows of my cars all the time and always talk to my mom and dad, like, what's out there? I would just be very interested in the sky and space, just wanting to know more. And so I would look out the window at night as often as I could. And this one night, I remember standing there with this heat blowing up my nightgown.
Yeah.
And I was holding on to the edge of the window frame, and I saw just out of the spark of my left eye to the left of me, up at the right corner of the window, like a big flash of light. And I thought, what was that? And I didn't know. I was just 5.5, right? So I remember feeling scared, and I ran. I just ran to tell my mom. And I was like, I told my mom, like, there's a big flash outside. I thought maybe there was a fire or some sort of, like, I don't know, some big explosion happened. Yeah. And because it looked like what I saw was not just like a quick flash. It was a flash, and then there was like an expansion of
like
light.
A smolder to it or something.
It was like an expansion of light that like lasted or something for a few seconds. I didn't know how to explain it. And it was like a green color. And I thought, what is this? So anyway, when I told my mom, she didn't know better at the time, but she dismissed it. And basically, it's time for bed.
It's hard for a kid to describe that.
Right. And I was 5. So
with the vocabulary you have at the time. And now you can visualize it and see it and maybe talk about it a little more to where it's like, okay, that's more of a rich thing. I can understand what you're talking about. But as a kid, you're like, big flash of light.
Right.
Scary. And it's...
Sure. And I didn't make any judgments about it. I just remember at this point in my life that I started seeing some very strange anomalies that, today I would probably have a different, and I do have a different viewpoint of what they are and how it started some other things around the corner. So as I moved up in my life, I had some wonderful experiences that kind of helped me to become a little bit more comfortable with the esoteric, you could say, types of things. Some what we would call supernatural experiences that opened me up to this being comfortable, I guess you could say, more comfortable.
At a younger age.
At a younger age. So
that was 5 was your first memorable. When would your next kind of experience have happened?
When I was 9.
Okay.
So there was, a few years gap that I can remember. From what I remember, there was a whole lot that started opening up things in the age of 9 for me. And I started experiencing a lot more, not only things that I would see out my window in the stars, so to speak, but I was having experiences in my dream state that I did not understand.
Okay.
And
did something change in your life at that point to bring this on, or was it just like a slow ramp up?
I think it's a combination of both, because for sure there was a catalyst in my life at that time. My father had passed away very young. And
sorry to hear that.
Oh, that's okay. It served me in such a beautiful way. As I perceive things now, it opened me up to a lot of awareness. So after he passed very young, and it was very strange and odd, from cancer, right?
Oh,
at just 30 years old, at the height of his music career.
Wow.
And so this allowed me to actually dive into this a little bit more. I was not really upset as much because I was prepared. I knew that he was sick and it was going to happen. And I knew that I was going to be still connected. So at that time in my life, I really wasn't as disturbed about it all as my siblings were, because I had conversations with him. I was seeing him in my dreams still. I was talking with him. And these things were happening to me on a regular basis. And my family thought I was just weird and odd, because I didn't see him as gone, you could say. I was having conversations. I was seeing dreams. And even though I still experienced a missing of his physical self, that was one indication that it was just a little strange for me that as 9 years old, I was like, no, it's fine. He's still here. And I was experiencing a lot of physical things from his connection as well. So a lot of strange anomalies happening with electricity and things just suddenly breaking in front of me, physical objects, when I would ask a question or speak to him. So there was a lot of that going on at 9 years old. It wasn't until I was really about 10 that things shifted in that regards for me. I started becoming severely afraid of just about everything. So I think I wasn't afraid so easily up until that point. And then this, invisible that we can't see with our physical eyes, that started becoming fearful for me for a while.
Was it anything in particular that kind of set that off?
I started having some other dreams that were feeling like I was a little bit out of control, like I couldn't control my body. Would have dreams where suddenly I would be paralyzed in the dream, like I was not able to move in my dream.
Like sleep paralysis?
You could say kind of like sleep paralysis. Now I understand a lot of that to be different things. Like you could be shifting, we talk about terms like dimensions or densities. You could be shifting those things, and your physical self would create the idea that you cannot move. So there's that one possibility. But as a child, I was very afraid. And so these kinds of dreams.
So it shifted from maybe like a comfort.
Yeah.
And something that you felt good about. And you're still feeling connected to your dad. Mm-hmm. But you're still having supernatural experiences.
Yes.
And then at some point, that shifted to fear.
Exactly. And what I want to say about that is very important, because when I started feeling fear is when my dreams and everything else I started taking on became much more amplified in that regard.
Okay.
And that was because I was holding so much fear. So I was just, vibrating at that level.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting a lot of answers at that time. I had to discover them for myself, because my father had passed, and my father was probably very open to these kinds of ideas, but my mom at that time was maybe not as much. She was, busy with her life, and she's doing her best to try to raise a family. The transition after my father had passed of why I went to being fearful into the dark.
Okay.
Darkness scared me. Just being in the dark really frightened me.
Like the physical dark.
Physical darkness, even closing my eyes. I didn't want to go to sleep at night because I was having a lot of experiences of things that I would see, and also all kinds of things that I could not explain. And some of them were darker oriented at that time. And what I realize now is that I was attracting that to myself based on what I was holding. I was just became so afraid of everything that I was just bringing that in to my reality.
Were these all in a dream state, or were some of these in a what you'd call a conscious state?
It was hard for me to know at some time, but falling asleep, it was in my dream state first. So what we would call the lucid dream state.
Yes.
Or what we now call the theta state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. That level of consciousness allows for, you could say, malleability of your thoughts.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of entities, spirit entities, or you could say even extraterrestrials that work in these astral realms, they can play in this level. And so a lot of the times contact is happening at this level.
Tuner. It's like a TV with a tuner, right? Like you're tuned into a certain station, now you can receive the signal.
Exactly. And so this also allows for a sense of sometimes not to be so sure that it was real.
Yeah.
So you don't freak out, right, about certain things.
That's a good way to think about that.
Right. So
because if you were just sitting in your car and, something came to visit you and you're like driving down the street, that would scare the shit out of you.
Right. So
and it may not be maybe even perceived as well.
Yeah.
You're not going to perceive anything. Just fear and surprise and shock and anxiety.
Yes.
So if there is an intelligent way to contact a human, if you were going to write an instruction book on it, through some kind of a, what would you say, supernatural frequency.
Right.
Some people think of as, extraterrestrials. That would be the way to do it.
Exactly. And this is...
I never thought of it like that. That's a weird way to think about it.
It's actually really, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because through that state, you're able to impart ideas, thoughts, suggestions without feeling this idea of imposing. Because we will question, is that real? That was just a dream. We still, as a society, think that dreams are not real, that all things in the dream state must be just a dream, and that this so-called physical reality is real.
Yeah. But, in the way that we think it is.
Of course, but it exists side by side, right, with the scientists who will tell you that's actually just made of space.
Yeah.
I mean, we have...
Well, you're talking about the scientific, basically how they're able to prove that most things are not actually solid.
Exactly.
There's more negative space or empty space within a piece of wood or a glass of water or your own body than there is occupied space.
Physical reality, in other words, has been proved scientifically that it is fractal in nature.
Almost like a projection.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a dream. Or you could say a hologram.
Yeah.
Now, this is just from the standpoint of what metaphysics is talking about.
Yeah.
But at that age, I became very afraid. And I started having a lot of these experiences that were dark. And I was afraid to go to sleep at night. And it was about...
Dark. And you say dark, and you're just talking about the losing control is what you said. Like you don't have control. Was there some kind of a message, or was there some kind of a theme to the darkness? What was it trying to tell you, or what was it showing you?
Well, oftentimes, and this wasn't every night, but during that age time, around 9 and 10 years old, I was really starting to experience more and more of these, you could say, dark entities that would, I would see in my state as soon as I closed my eyes. Now, what I thought were dark entities, okay, now I have a different perspective also. So a lot of the things that I would see when I closed my eyes right off the bat were these large black eyes. As soon as I closed my eyes, I would see like a face up close. And it was something that I would recognize today as the typical kind of gray alien face.
Okay.
But I didn't know what a gray looked like at that age. I'd never seen one.
Did you think it was an alien or a monster?
No. I thought it was some sort of monster.
Or a ghost.
I thought it was like a monster.
Yeah.
And I just would see these large black eyes, like looking really close at me. And then, of course, with all the fear I was having, I was associating it must be some monster, must be some kind of dark thing, because
Or demons.
All the hair on
People
my
talk about
arms would stand
demons
straight up. I would feel coldness around me.
Yeah.
I would have all these sensations physically, along with these visuals that were so alarming. My heart feel like would start. And I remember laying in the bed so many times with tears coming down my face and not wanting to even get out of the bed to just tell my mom. So I would just lay there with the sheets tightly up to my neck and close my eyes. And I remember saying to myself over and over again when I was at this age, I didn't believe, I had some general idea of religion, but I don't talk about religion too much because it's not a commentary on religion. But at that time, my mom and my dad had told me, there's God out there. So at that age, I was praying to God. And I would ask in the bed, please keep me safe for today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And I would keep going until I would fall asleep because I would think if I missed one day, then that would be the day they would get me. Like these.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was terrified. And this was just a misperception I had as a child. Mm-hmm. However, so the ending to the story actually is wonderful because it turned completely as a 180. Eventually, I started to come out of this fear phase of all these things that I was experiencing with you could say, the invisible, what we cannot see.
Yeah.
And so when I was a little older, in my teens, I had a few other experiences that were really, really, really strange. One of them being I was working at my desk, and it was very late at night. I was working on some sort of project I was doing. I don't remember what the project was, but I was intensely, my mind was focused, writing. And I remember looking up for a second and feeling like this big whoosh of presence. It's kind of like when you sense somebody's walking behind you.
Yeah.
And somebody's there, but you cannot see them. I felt this intense presence in front of me. And I looked, searching in front of me, like, where is this being? Because I can sense something, a presence.
Was your desk facing out into the room?
It was facing out against glass windows, actually into the night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was open. Actually, that area was open.
Oh, that's creepy.
But I was comfortable with that. I would, keep my lights on, and I was connected, with all areas of my home and people there. And I remember looking straight out, sensing this presence. And within a second, as soon as I looked into that area, there was a flash of light in front of my desk that it lit up the entire room. And it was a vertical pillar of light that went from the floor to the ceiling. And
inside the room?
Inside the room. Like this was inside the room, not outside the glass.
Wow.
In front of my desk, right where I was perceiving.
So a foot in front of you or something.
Yeah, less than that. I mean, it was right here. And I still remember this to this day because the light, as soon as there was no sound. It was just this extreme pillar of light that expanded out and moved out to maybe just a foot in width, not bigger than that, but it was very tall. And it started to form within a second. Like it flashed and then it started to form into this something physicalized. And I could see it starting to form in front of me. And I just got scared. I just got very scared.
Yeah.
And I ran. I just ran out of the room.
Was there any other perception to it other than your vision? Was there heat? Was there
I sensed that there was a temperature change.
Okay.
But there was no other sound. There was no flash of crack, like it wasn't lightning. There was no there was no beautiful, it was an angel. I don't know what it was, but it started to form itself. This experience just helped me later on, as I see in retrospect, to start to understand how dimensions work and densities work, which is an important aspect of how extraterrestrials interact with humans. And this is such an important part to talk about because we are talking about things like dreams and lucid dreaming and these types of states, even daydreaming, or we can say what hypnotism is all about. And these are common things that we are all everyday people.
Do you think when you were writing, you were in some kind of, just because you were focused, writing, quiet,
Yes.
almost meditative?
Yes.
Perhaps?
See, because what I understand now is these states where we are doing something that we love or we are immersed in it is what we call the channeling state. And the channeling state is a vibration. It is from 40 to 100 hertz. And this is a very high state of being. When
40 to 100 hertz.
Right. That's what we call the gamma state.
Is this a measurable frequency? Is that?
It's a measurable frequency.
Okay.
But we've termed it as a society. This word channeling is a buzzword in today's society. But it doesn't have the same meaning as it did a decade ago even. Because we all do it. Channeling is a natural state when we're following our passion, and sometimes time slips away from us and we say, oh my goodness, how did 4 hours pass? I was just, seems like I just started that. That's a form of channeling. Sometimes you're driving home and you go, wow, I took all these turns and things. I don't even remember how I got home.
They call it flow state.
Exactly.
They're called flow state.
Exactly.
Kind of like a success buzzword, like you need to get into flow state.
Right. Well,
and go
athletes
do push-ups.
kind of created this big buzz about it, right? Because they get into the zone, they call it.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. And actually some very high performing people utilize this technique for manifesting incredible things in their life. So it is a tool that you can utilize, but a lot of us do it unconsciously.
So channeling, flow, 40 to 140.
40 to 100 hertz.
40 to 100 hertz.
Is the gamma state. Yeah.
This is something that they could connect to you and measure.
Yes, they could. They have done it with many, many other people.
Oh, wow.
And this is something I would encourage anyone.
And that's
who's
brain
listening.
waves.
It's brain waves, and they can measure it.
Wow.
So when you're following your passion, you're doing something that you love to do. You are in this state. You are now in a state where you can receive information through the brain, and then perceive it through the personality self differently. So you're able to basically
filter it.
Yes, and identify things differently. In other words, you basically open up a whole new level of perception.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it didn't exist before, but now you're able to see it. It's kind of like TV channels. If you're tuned to channel 3, you are seeing what's on channel 3. But if you tune to channel 4, you are not seeing what's on channel 3, although what's on channel 3 simultaneously is existing.
It's still there. It still
there.
exists.
You just can't see it. So
I always like that analogy to just how little we understand. And there's definitely something to frequencies. And that's a great analogy because it's something people can, you get that. You're like, okay, the TV channel, the radio channel still broadcasting.
Exactly.
It's still right here. It's still all around us. But you're just not tuned. You don't have the equipment.
Exactly.
You're not, calibrated.
Exactly.
I just thought that was... So after that experience you had with the forming light, what followed that?
What followed that was a series of experiences that I began within myself, developing my own intuition. I started meeting a lot of people that were doing what we call supernatural things, that they were having extraterrestrial experiences themselves. And I started learning about this idea of extraterrestrials, which...
You're meeting in person?
I met people that were having experiences.
Okay.
I did not have any experiences that I knew of at that time. I didn't know that they could be connected. I just thought that they were something...
Light thing?
I didn't know. I just thought it might have been...
Did you think it was a haunting?
I thought it might have been a ghost.
Yeah.
But at that time, I didn't know what ghosts were. Yeah. I didn't have an idea of what the astral realm was. And so, of course, when you don't know, maybe the first thing you might think is fear, right? It's got to be something out to get me, right? Yeah. We don't know. So this happened to me where I had the awareness for about 2 years of really diving deep into understanding esoterics, understanding spirit, understanding dimensions and density. And I was introduced to several people that were doing amazing things. And to this day, it's mind-blowing.
Where was this at, like geographically?
Geographically in Ohio.
Okay.
So I was in my teens at that time, and I had met some people that had introduced me to some very, you could say, supernatural type of beings that were doing things far off in the distance. And I was very much interested in learning about psychic ability and different states of consciousness and immersing myself in that awareness. So they introduced me to several people. I went to a house with a friend who was also very, very psychic. She worked at a hospital and always could see auras of people and would always tell me things like, all right, I know you're going to call. She was very adept.
Intuitive, yeah.
Highly intuitive and in touch with herself that way. And I always thought that was so strange. She could see what they call an aura, right? Which is basically the electromagnetic energy that surrounds all living things.
Okay.
So I started learning about this from her, and she introduced me to this person. We drove for 6 hours into this back alley, nowhere land, where this person lived in this little humble home with about 5 different students that were all adults.
Oh, wow.
And they lived together in this home, and I thought it was the strangest thing. I was actually a little bit afraid to go there, but...
Yeah, it sounds just from the outside a little creepy.
Yes.
Or it's like that where the Oracle lives in the Matrix and they got all those people inside doing all the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went with my friend because she highly said, you need to go here. And when she said those kinds of things, I said, all right, we're going to go. So we went together, and, I was not more than 17, I think, at this time. And I met this man who came to greet me at the door, knew exactly who I was. She had set this up, right?
Yeah.
And then brought me inside, and there was other students there. This was no houses in sight for miles. Just this one. Yes. And she had told me a little bit about who he was. So he was a psychic, and that he was going to do some sort of reading for me. So I was open. I had never had a psychic reading done. I said, okay, sure, I'll go. And at this place, all these students that were sitting there, very nice, beautiful people, really nice. They offered me some tea. And we went, and in the back, he said, would you like to have a cup of hot coffee? I said, I don't drink coffee. It's fine. I'll have some tea. It's fine. He passed me a cup. And as he passed me the cup, he just looked at me for a second. And he poured the water over this, a styrofoam cup. It's a regular styrofoam cup. It was not a magic trick. And this water, just plain water, turned into tea. Like it was just water coming out of this whole thing and turned into tea. He held it in his hand for a little bit, and then he offered it to me. And I thought, okay, that's weird. Oh, I forgot to mention too, as we were walking into the house, all the electricity was going crazy. Like lights were blinking off and on. There was static happening as both of us walked in that freaked me out for sure. I was just standing next to my friend the whole time.
Like a static sound?
Like it was like shh. And the lights were going on and off. They had... and
everyone's just calm with that.
They were all calm, as if they, it was normal.
It's normal.
Right. And so my friend and I just walked in, and she was also she was fine. But I was like, what is going on?
You're edgy. How was the tea? Was it any good?
It was fine. I drank all of it. It was normal tea.
Instant tea.
But this was a first thing that I was like, whoa, how did he do that? Now, I just thought he was just a very strange individual with some abilities that I didn't understand. I was even open to the idea he's just some sort of magician. What's going on? But with his students there, they were all introduced themselves as really nice people, different ages. There was one really older person there, but most of them were in their 20s and 30s.
Okay.
So they seemed like normal people wearing normal clothes, like just doing normal things, but they lived with him. They were studying from him.
Wow.
So I didn't really know more than what my friend Athena was telling me, which was he's a psychic. He's got a lot of things. I told him about you. He wants to meet you. He's going to do a reading for you. I said, okay, fine. So he does this reading, and it was really alarming because I had never had any kind of psychic reading done on me before, but it was to the T. I mean, so much that he said about me. I was like, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? And he was using different divination tools. He had some tarot cards and he had some other crystals that were around him. Other than that, he was just very forward with me, very authentic, very bold, and just stated certain things. And at that time, I did not know, my own power at that time. I just thought that he's telling me something that I don't really have a choice in. It's just kind of, here's what I see and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he told me many different things. And one of them, he said, make sure your car insurance is paid up next month because you're probably going to get into a little fender bender here,
What the heck?
And I was like, oh, so anyway, I actually only remember that because after this whole experience, after I left this place, and when I came to understand later, he was having extraterrestrial contact with a group of beings called the Syrians, which we can go into another topic on. But I didn't understand this now. But when I left that place, I kind of thought of it like, wow, that was really strange. He was right on so many things about me. How could he have known all of that? This is my first time ever having a psychic experience where somebody was giving a reading. So I didn't have any idea. But a month afterwards, I had completely forgotten about all the little things. Of course, I had a recording, but I had forgotten about it. And sure enough, I got into a little car fender bender. And that was like, oh my goodness. Like exactly on the time, it was on the 23rd. And I went back and I went, okay, this is really strange. There's something to this. What is going on? So it opened me up a whole bunch into this whole divine invisible idea of dimensions, psychics, especially now with this idea of the Syrian connection with them, because I didn't know.
You're saying Syrian?
Syrians, yes. So
how do I spell that?
Sirian.
Okay.
So the star Sirius.
Now I get it.
Yeah, let's talk seriously.
It's like depth. It's like depth. Yeah.
Depth.
Like, are we saying that?
Seriously. So I didn't understand anything about extraterrestrials or beings at that time. Only the visions that I had had about these big black eyes in my mind. That's the only thing I knew. But this awareness during these years about understanding psychic ability and opening myself up to these channeling states and being able to perceive more allowed my awareness to expand as well. And this is what I'd like to share with every other housewife out there, mother, father, student, because this is happening on a regular basis for ourselves if we take it. It's like walking past a buffet and you may see it, but you don't have to put it on your plate. You can walk right past it, or you can put it on your plate. And if you put it on your plate, you're basically voting for more of that, please. And so the universe will give that to you. As we talked about earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So situations and circumstances begin to show up in your life to reflect back to you what it is that you are now desirous of knowing, wanting to understand much, much better.
And there's a lot of, and I've been seeing a lot of this, there's a lot of science that backs all of this multidimensional psychic ability.
Absolutely.
And it's like we've always tried to categorize, I guess, what you'd call the spiritual and the scientific, and they each have their own lanes.
Yes.
And that's always seemed so strange to me because there's a lot of intersection.
Yes.
In all of that between, and even if you want to go to the traditional religions and science, there's a lot of intersection.
Absolutely.
And we make them like they're adversarial.
Right.
Like, well, if science doesn't prove every single thing this religious text says, then that's all crap. And if the religious text says something that goes against the science, well, then that's all crap.
We like to categorize things and put them in boxes.
Well, and we're also assuming that both of these things are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We're assuming our spiritual guidance or our religious text is perfect,
mm-hmm.
or we're assuming the science knows everything and is also perfect. And we're trying to use them to contradict each other instead of seeing all this huge intersection that they have. And that's amazed me for such a long time. And what you're talking about, there is a lot of data in science, and they've done studies and experiments and different things that back a lot of this up.
Yes, especially in the last decade.
Yeah.
There's been a tremendous amount of research into the states of consciousness, and actually in metaphysics, how consciousness affects our physical reality.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack on that subject, but it is directly relevant to what we're talking about. And I want to make it so common for everyday people who are listening in to understand that this is not a special person. I'm not a special person that just has some supernatural abilities to be able to perceive certain things that someone else cannot. They absolutely can. Everyone has the ability to perceive. Everyone has the ability to dream. Everyone has the ability to alter their states of consciousness, either naturally or can be altered through plant medicines and things that we know of today that are being utilized for healing benefits and other medical benefits as well.
And people are always talking about like meditation.
Meditation.
That's come up a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just about every bit of self-help advice I ever see is always meditation.
Exactly. And the idea of meditation as well is becoming much more universal, much more commonplace. It's not something that we think of anymore as a society in general, because it's been out there, so to speak, in our collective vocabulary, that you have to sit in the lotus position and hold your fingers like this and om for 2 hours.
Exactly.
Meditation could be doing art. It could be taking a walk on the beach. It could be writing a poem. It could be taking a shower, that you're really just completely immersed in a place of no thought. You're just kind of being.
Yeah.
And this is all very important, because when people know that they too reach these states every single day on a regular basis, they have access to be able to reach these so-called supernatural states, which are actually supernatural. And this is very, very important, because this allowed me to also share my story with so many people that began to also explore on their own, which are now doing amazing channelings and connectings with so many beings that are already there, waiting for us to connect with them, because it's not necessarily what we think about imposing on humanity. It's not that. There's a lot more that has not been explained. And these beings of high consciousness that are directly, that have access to us on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's whether or not we are able to perceive them, whether we're ready to perceive them. And when we start preparing ourselves to become more ready, which is essentially, this is another big buzzword today, but raising your vibration.
Yeah.
This is what it's about. This word vibration doesn't have to be, hocus pocus anymore. This is a common word, and everything is vibration. So when we understand our thoughts are vibration, what we say, our words, the things that we are putting into our bodies, all these things carry a vibration, a frequency. And so this is all about what extraterrestrials are. The ones of higher aspects that can communicate with us psychically, all these things are all on a higher vibration, and they are everywhere. We have an airport happening above us all the time in our skies, with so many craft and ships from many civilizations that are here to observe humanity at this time. Why? Because it's an exciting time. We are, as a collective, doing so much awakening to the awareness. We are basically moving out of this idea of the narrative that's been presented, that we've adopted, we've believed, which was, we are alone in the universe.
Well, it was either, I think there was the are we alone?
Mm-hmm.
There was that big question. And that all started maybe back in the 40s, 50s.
Right.
And you had all the stuff that happened at Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like there's been this kind of perception of this adversarial, this fear, this, Independence Day, the movie. Then you had E.T.
Right.
At the same time, but then you had Independence Day.
Right.
Which was like, they're coming here to, suck up our ocean water.
Sure.
Or whatever they want to do.
Right.
To defeat us. And I always think like the most ridiculous, and I heard someone make the argument years ago, and I was like, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
If whatever higher level being, higher level consciousness, higher level technology can come here,
mm-hmm.
it could just wipe you out.
Right.
You're not going to shoot it.
Right.
You're not going to fight it. You're not going to send a F-15 after it.
Right.
It's here, and it's obviously way more advanced.
Yeah.
And it's only being observed probably because it wants to be observed or doesn't care if it's observed.
Mm-hmm.
Because that thing could go full incognito and disappear.
Right.
Whatever it is. If they're talking about like ships, like seeing the flying things, or even, physical beings, or any kind of contact, like what they're calling like CE5 now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it wants to be there.
Exactly.
And there's no point kind of fighting it, whatever it is. And I mean, people have attributed hauntings.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what that is? Exactly. Demons, ghosts. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's all part of something that we can't understand.
Exactly.
And we get scared of it. It's like a dog. Like a dog hears a noise, before it knows what it is, starts barking. It's scared because it doesn't know. And then, okay, that's my owner.
Exactly.
It starts wagging its tail.
Right. It's the same old concept of being afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
So what I was explaining in my story about the shift that happened from being so afraid of what I was perceiving at the time and making the judgment that it was some dark thing because I didn't understand it. And then also being in a place now where I can see in retrospect, that was because I was filtering it through fear and having a totally different perspective about it, understanding that as I bring in the fear vibration, I start attracting more and more of those things to reflect to myself. It was interesting. We have, the opportunity in the time that we're living in today, which is so profound, because the drip of this understanding of that we are not alone in the universe, and the teasing of that's kind of been going on for decades, since 1947, right? With the Roswell incident that quickly got brushed up. And, I'm not going to make a commentary on the whole Roswell incident, but that really, as a catalyst, was the first real experience that our civilization, so in this time and age, current time, that was like, wait, what is that? Let's quick. So 40 years passed, we moved into 1987. And then there was a lot of, at that time, a whole bunch of what we would say today, information coming into.
Was that kind of the Bob Lazar era?
Yes.
Okay.
And also the time period where a lot of disclosure started coming out. We started having a lot of what we would call channelers, that were beyond what Edgar Cayce was doing, which was more in the sleep state. Edgar Cayce was a channeler in the 1940s and 50s that was very popular, and they called him the sleeping prophet. He predicted a lot of things, but he was also reading from that level of consciousness.
Yeah.
And the level of consciousness that changed in the 1980s when an influx of information started coming through, a massive amount of channelers all over the planet that were disseminating what we would call galactic consciousness, talking about extraterrestrials, talking about different races of beings, you could say our galactic neighbors, and familiarizing those small pockets of people that were being receivers of this information at that time, many of them. And some of them are still here today. Most of them are. And this became the seed for a lot of this information start coming out, because this is how they actually start to make first contact, you could say, with people in general. They start with dream states, they start with channeling states, and being able to present information.
So you think it's like a slow process?
It doesn't have to be. It's one way. As
but
a collective.
Think if they're, we're being contacted, that they're intentionally taking it slow, kind of like what we talked about before.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason for that. And that is because if you were to have face-to-face contact right now with most of us, we would not be ready. Most of us would go into psychotic shock.
Yeah.
Why? Because it brings up within us things that we have not integrated within ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it can put you into psychotic shock. And so we prepare ourselves. We start pre-paving the way for society to become an interstellar society. And that means we have to start letting go of things that no longer serve us in our own life, start following our passions, start letting go of the negative belief systems that keep our vibration low.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we start lightening up our vibration. Now we're more of a match to where they are.
Yeah.
Say we can meet halfway.
So you're ready now.
In that sense. Yes.
Have you, it just kind of, you're talking about this process and stuff, and it reminds me, have you seen 3-Body Problem?
No, I have not seen this. Is this a movie?
Yeah, it's a show.
Oh, okay.
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
But it was like, it's almost like what you're saying, but it's like the bad scenario of it.
Okay.
And I know like a lot of my listeners probably saw it. It's really popular. Check it out.
I will.
It's interesting.
I would love to check it out, yeah.
But they're like they're having contact with another race, right? Mm-hmm. Or another, planet from some other place. And they like contact it in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, hey. And then I think the other race, like some other being from that race hops on and they're like, I'm the only nice one here. All these other people are psychos. Don't ever contact us again. Mm-hmm. Like, pretend you didn't see this.
Right.
But they did. And then this thing's like, we're going to come smush you.
Yeah.
But they come in with this kind of peaceful thing like, oh, we're coming for peace.
Yeah.
And, obviously they had some kind of nefarious intention to it. But it was interesting because it's similar to what you're saying, but it's just like a little twist on it. And it was well written. Like it was thoughtfully written.
Right.
Like it's a good story.
But such an important point that you just brought up. And it's so relevant to what I'm going to talk about because there's a big fear thing surrounding extraterrestrials in our society as a whole. And, we can blame it on media,
Independence Day, man.
So many movies.
Mars Attacks.
So many movies, right?
Yeah.
And so many shows that portray the idea of connecting with beings outside of humanity, that they would be attackers. They would somehow drain us of all of our power. And these fears are coming out in our media for those reasons, as many, you could say, reflections, of ourselves. But essentially, what's really important is that when we understand vibration, and as I mentioned to you, that when I was focusing on fear, I was getting more of that.
Yeah.
Another analogy I'll give you that's really relevant to this is for many years.
I love analogies.
That's like another word that's one of those funky words. It's like hard to say. Analogies.
Now you made me think about it. Now I won't feel sad. I'm not trying. It was effortless before.
Right. So, this idea, what we call the power of attraction, right? We've heard of this, right? It's actually not like that. It's more like the power of subtraction because everything's always here and now. But as we take the things that are blocking, we allow what's naturally coming. So we can have a vibration of fear and we are going to get more of that. Many years I was terrified with capital T of spiders. And I went through, somebody could just say the word and I would freak. So, and today I'm a totally different person. Like,
you got a pet spider?
I don't want one on me, but I would certainly not flinch. And I have picked them up and taken them outside. And this is a total 180 for me. But this was because I actually needed to do the so-called work of integrating why I was so afraid of it. But I was bringing spiders into my reality all the time. I would see spiders everywhere. They would be I had car crashes of spiders. Everywhere I went, there were spiders. And I couldn't understand this for many years until I started going, hey, you're
so scared of spiders.
I was attracting
You're inviting spiders.
I was just being that vibration.
Wow.
I was carrying a vibration of fear of them. So what showed up?
Even in the natural realm, it's such an observable thing, because
it is.
You see people and you see it in yourself. And I mean, people who think shit's not going to work out, it doesn't work out.
Right.
People who think they have bad luck keep getting bad luck.
It's true. It actually amplifies on itself.
Yeah.
So when you say, when it rains, it pours. Well, yes. And you can also, the reciprocal is also true. You say, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm getting well, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting better. And this idea is not ponies and glitter talk positive thinking. There's a real substance to this. And, as we study the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton and so many others who are doing amazing science with the heart and brain coherence and understanding how the physics of the brain, how the physics of consciousness actually work, then we understand why it is that we are creating by default. Most of us, it's just on autopilot.
Yep.
Right? But when we start to take our power back, we start learning that we can create consciously. This shifts everything. We are no longer victims. Now we become empowered beings. And we understand we take responsibility for the things that are showing up, not in a way that's like, start to feel resentment and guilt, these kinds of things, but the awareness of how we are creating. So this goes into a bigger subject of understanding, like, well, why would I ever create myself to have like this negative thing and all that kind of stuff? And there's a big question behind all that, but there's bigger decisions when we talk about the I. Who are you? We're not just talking about the physical body. We're talking about a multidimensional being. So you are you in the physical sense, so to speak, sitting in front of me. But you are also you that is a bigger you that's expanded, that is actually creating this physical you. So in other words, the soul, you could say, as somebody would identify.
Yeah.
Your energy self is much bigger. You are a spiritual being, first, having a human experience. It's not the other way around. You're not a human having a spiritual experience in something. It's opposite.
Yeah.
So this idea of understanding the bigness of who you are, first of all.
That's your spirit. I mean, I think people, before they could understand anything else, it's your spirit.
Right. And this is starting to come in more of awareness as our society understands galactic consciousness, starting to understand how time works, how we create our reality, and also how everything is vibration. Because from one perspective, if you think you are just a physical body and this is all physical, and then there's only physical beings in this universe that will come and attack me, and this is one perspective coming from that level. If you play with a Ouija board and you start saying, oh my God, what's going to come through? I don't know. Let's try. You're going to bring in entities that will communicate with you from the astral realm that may be not very high in vibration, because they're going to match what you're requesting. But if you come in with an empowered state.
What if you go to a Ouija board happy?
You will attract entities from different levels of consciousness that will match your vibration.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You will not meet. And anything that you meet, in the spiritual realms, extraterrestrials are multidimensional as well. And they're very adept at being able to, I'm going to use this word very loosely, shapeshift. So many of them in the higher realms can take physical form if they wish. They can create a craft, which they don't actually need to travel in, but they would create that because they know we kind of need to perceive that. So it helps
That's
to kind of
what
create
I've thought
connection.
about that.
Yes, they don't actually need to travel.
Yeah.
If everything is frequency.
That's the weird thing.
Yes.
That's come to light, and people have been kind of saying, and I'm like, they're just doing that for a show.
And again,
because it's what we expect.
Right. A lot of this is about different levels of consciousness. So there are beings on a lower level of consciousness that still use physical craft, that still use time portals. They still use wormholes through space. And yes, you can utilize space in that way. And time travel isn't really what we think it is, but their awareness of space and time is different. And they, those in the high realms don't have to necessarily utilize that. They just simply switch frequencies. There's actually no travel that takes place.
Yeah.
So when you switch frequencies, it's immediate. And so this is actually how so-called time travel works. But without digressing too far down that rabbit hole, in regards to extraterrestrials, many of them work this way. They will present themselves in, you could say, a pillar of light and then start to take shape. Or some of them may come even in an animal. They may show up in an animal form in front of you and perceive certain things. Many of the races that we're dealing with now are so close to human, how they look in appearance when they show their physical self, they would pass for humans walking down the street.
Really?
With slight differences.
Have you ever seen one?
Yes, I have seen one.
Really?
Now I have a couple that I'm always wondering in the back of my mind what that was.
Okay.
But there is one that stands out very strong for me that I'll not forget. And I'll share another story, a couple of stories as well. And sometimes this can happen. There are beings that kind of fit in with society. In other words, they've been here for a while. Okay. In other words, when we talk about open contact happening on a global scale, we're not talking about UFOs landing on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that kind of scenario is, it can happen and
it's a little too overt.
Inevitably would, but contact is happening in pockets with people first. It's been happening on our planet for millions of years. And with the natives on the planet who are not really related to the city atmosphere and culture, they live in these little isolated areas on the planet. They have been in contact with beings for many, many thousands of years on a regular basis. They're so sure of it. And many of these native tribes, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
So these are in their stories, etc.
It's in a lot of our stories, and a lot of our whatever
stories.
History we have.
Right.
And accounts we have. I mean, people have always theorized with the Egyptians, and, you go back to Atlantis and these different things. And
yes,
there's a lot more to that.
Absolutely.
Than we've figured out. Like, we don't even know how they built the pyramids.
Right. And we're starting to have all that now start to come to the forefront of our consciousness. It's being presented in new ideas. New things are coming out, new discoveries. And this is where we as a society can say we're bridging the gap to how we become living as, you could say, spacefaring citizens of planet Earth. And this is happening right now in 2024 as we speak in a bigger way. It's shifting. You can see it every day. New people coming on board, disclosures coming out. It's amazing last year that we had this disclosure from the government that admitted collecting bodies, from craft. And I was so shocked when I heard that, as so many other people were.
Yeah.
And
I think the people that don't follow it, and we're like, what the fuck are they talking about this now?
Exactly. They went to go see the Barbie movie afterwards, like, oh yeah, let's go see Barbie.
It was right around the Barbie time.
It didn't have the same impact. And that doesn't, I'm not placing a judgment, but it could
weirded me out.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been like huge in the realm of this. I don't follow it super closely.
Right.
But, you see all this stuff coming out on the news, and they're giving press conferences from the Pentagon, and like, why the fuck are they talking about this?
Yeah.
I thought y'all motherfuckers were hiding this shit.
Right.
And here you are talking about it?
Right. So the drip is turning into more of a stream. And that's only one aspect of it. There's so many other areas of disclosure that are being released. Now, I think it's twofold, but this aspect for us to be able to take that information and go, hey, I'm either going to do something with it or I'm just going to ignore it. I think many people may approach it from the standpoint of like, whoa, that's actually a little too heavy for me to actually absorb. I need to go to work tomorrow. I gotta go home and like make dinner for my kids, and they've got a school project tomorrow. Like I can't be thinking about like how that affects my history or how does that affect my daily life. So the thing is,
it's a hard thing to try to convince people of. You have the mundane, you have the daily.
Right.
You still got to do it.
But the interesting part is that I don't think anything needs to be convinced. It's just going to be there where people are going to either accept it or not.
Yeah.
This is not something that's going away. This is something that's becoming more and more prevalent in our daily life. You will get to a point very soon, we will, as a society, where craft being in the sky being seen more and more and more. I mean, how many YouTube videos with the, onset of the digital age that we're in, with people capturing live video every day. Now that's, contradicted with people who are great at Photoshop. Also, people can say, oh yeah, well, how many people are actually
sucks too.
Creating their own,
too.
There's a lot of that out there. That's true.
Yeah.
But
it used to be like a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right. And today you have to be discerning on everything that you see. You have to be like, wow, maybe that's just somebody's
really
amazing
good
creation.
AI.
Yeah. And the AI technology that we have today is even a huge permission slip for even more of that to happen. But
so what was your encounter?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So the encounter was,
I'm waiting on that one.
I went to a festival and where there was a lot of people. It was a music festival. There was a lot of people, and it was over, and it was time to leave. And I was not leaving with my group. I went by myself, and I started walking back. And there was, to my right, there was a pocket of small, what seemed like kids, like, I don't know, teenagers, something. Yeah. And there was one kid that froze as I was walking, and all the other big groups of people were walking kind of far away. So it was just this pocket of kids, and then there was me. And I looked over to my right, and in this group, maybe 5 or 6, all boys, teenagers, I would say.
Sure.
One boy was walking towards the tree line, and then there was a tree line and a parking lot here, and started walking in front of the group. And he just, became my attention first because he came out of the group, and started looking at his hands. And his hands were lighting up. They were lit and he started freaking out. Okay. So this person started running, right? And I just started looking at this, what is going on? Is this a human? What is going on? So he just took off and disappeared. I never saw that. And the rest of the group followed him, but didn't freak out or anything. But this kid started freaking out. So I disappeared into the tree line, never saw him again.
So
whatever.
But
he looked directly at me. And our eyes locked right in. Yeah. Like he knew I saw him. Right. And I'm not really sure what he was, but that was definitely not human.
My hands have never done that.
They lit up like 1,000 suns. Like there was like a big bomb almost in front of his hands. And so
it's almost like he didn't know what was going on.
He was definitely frightened.
Yeah. Wow.
He was definitely frightened, but it was almost like I caught him. That was kind of the feeling I got. I don't know what I caught him with, but he took off running and went into the streets. That was like a strange experience. I was like,
How long ago was that?
This was in the 1990s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Early 1990s. So I'll never forget that. And his eyes locked with mine, like strange. So what I'm trying to say to you is that many of these beings that are so-called aliens, as I was mentioning to you, are very much like humans. They can look just like us, except with maybe slight differences.
Like what?
So maybe their eyes are slightly bigger. Sometimes they may have, a slight difference in eye color. Maybe sometimes the eyes can turn black. Have you ever seen these children with black eyes? There's a whole bunch of pictures and stuff with
the black. There's something
they
called
call
the
them the black-eyed children, right?
Okay.
And sometimes these children can, at will, make their eyes turn black, right? But it's not always like that. But these are different DNA aspects of themselves. So this is another way that you could say this extraterrestrial consciousness is kind of interweaving into our society, because they can take on human bodies also. And then the DNA can be reflected out. So that's one form. As they live their life, so to speak, in a human form, they have all this DNA that's, you could say, activated when regular humans are not. So this is one way that they can interact with society. And then they, can have the lifetime on Earth, you could say, to reflect with. So this is happening with a lot of extraterrestrial races. They will kind of work their way in as having a human life experience so that they can relate to humans. And then come back as channeling information to that same entity now who's much older.
So what would you say was kind of your most intense encounter? Like if I saw it or if someone else saw it and you'd be like, holy shit.
Yeah. So
like that holy shit moment.
Yeah. That was one experience I had in my 20s that I was living on.
Like undeniable.
Yeah. So this actually, this was something that just, I don't know how words, I have drawings of it that I made, but I was living in a high rise and I was looking out my window and had my bed always facing the window. Yeah. And it was on the 11th floor. And I went to sleep that night. And before I went to sleep, I was hearing all kinds of sounds in my ears, like very high pitched sounds. Sometimes this can be just a health thing. And other times that's how you can sense vibration shifting. Sometimes the inner ear is what is the indicator of shifts in vibration. So you'll hear the pitch changing around you. And also you can sometimes sense a vibrational change physically with chills and your hair stands up on your arm.
A lot of the things they've associated with the hauntings, or I've heard haunting stories.
Right. And they'll always usually mention temperature changes and things like that, because that's a vibrational, we're receiving that. So we would sense it differently. Our physical body would sense it differently through sound or through also temperature changes and things like that. So I went to bed, and before I went to bed, I was having like almost, it was almost like I was hallucinating, because I was not remembering, like time was starting to become placid for me. So this is an interesting side effect for a lot of people who have had extraterrestrial experiences where they think they've been gone for, an hour, and they've been gone for like a day and a half or longer.
That's crazy.
Because time is different.
Yeah.
So when you're having the experience, you may be there for 5 days, a year, whatever, doing the experience, but you'll experience it when you wake up, so to speak, as just a few seconds or a minute.
Wow.
So it can be that different.
I've heard of that. I've heard of people recounting it that way.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? I've only been gone like 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then maybe the entire day has gone. Where have you been?
Yeah.
I don't know. So missing of time is, usually related to these types of incidents. So I had gone to bed and I had seen in my window, which what I remembered was what I thought was like, this can't be real. This must be a dream I had. And I was sitting up in my bed sweating. And there was a full ship, and I'm calling it a ship or craft. It was a typical, what we would call UFO saucer type shape craft that had different colored lights that were going back and then forth and back and forth. And it was like right in front of my window.
Parked right in front of your shed.
Parked right in front. And I couldn't see the entire thing, but I could see a good chunk of the front, and it was making no sound. And I caught myself sitting up in my bed, and my daughter was with me at the time, who was sleeping, and she was very small, 3 years old or so. And I saw that I was profusely sweating, and I saw this thing out there, and I just immediately chalked it up. This is a dream. This is a dream. This is a dream. And then I went into this state. It's almost like I was so afraid of kind of what I was seeing that they just kind of helped me. That's what it felt like. I was just, let's not let this be time right now. Let's pull this into a different time space where it can be considered as a dream.
Yeah.
So, and this is actually how they work. I didn't know that at the time, but this is actually how they work.
How did you figure that out?
So I not only figured it out, but through experience and also through the contact that I'm having now and being told, and this information is being set that this is how the protocols work, as how they start introducing the contact. So if fear comes into play too much, they will pull it right back into a dream state, and then memory can also be erased, so to speak. It's not
like
actually
Men in
erased,
Black.
but it's actually filed away. So people under hypnotic regression can start to remember experiences that they actually had, that they may say, I never remembered that until now. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's there. It's just stored away somewhere. Or this was a dream I had. This was a dream.
Yeah.
That I don't know how this dream happened. So in actuality, it was actually a physical experience, right? This is happening for many of us. And for those of you out there that are listening, that have your own stories about, I had this dream, I saw this craft, I had this. If you doubt for 1 second that there's not a connection to deeper states of who you are to that. In other words, don't dismiss it as simply a dream.
Yeah.
This is what the old program was, oh, it's just a dream. It can't be real. But what the science is telling us today through the work of so many others, including Nassim Haramein, who's very, very proficient in this understanding about how dreams and consciousness are basically reality in a different form.
Yeah.
It's a different form of reality. So we just think of it as not real because this is real, so that can't be.
Yeah.
So contact is happening on this level first and pre-paving the way for us to have physical, open, face-to-face, touchable contact, which has already happened in many different places. But
have you had that yet?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Not yet. And I'm not sure I'm quite ready for it yet. I'm preparing for myself, though. And I'm honest with it because I really would like to have that, but I don't think I'm quite ready yet. But I am doing what is needed to get myself to that place where I feel like I can be. So I've been actively doing a lot of things to prepare myself for open contact in that way, in the most physical sense, with my awareness. So in one sense, it's already happened. And in another sense, it's now becoming aware that's already happened.
Okay.
And then you start allowing, when that awareness starts to come with the knowingness, then it's able to show up for you in that sense. So this is, for those of you who are familiar with CE5s and Dr. Stephen Greer,
yep,
and all of the protocol work that he does, and he talks about a lot of this and the preparation.
So that's a good place to start.
Sure.
If you have like a very base, and I watched him, over a couple of years ago or something. And it's a very, I guess, easy, explainable place to start. That, I mean, there's obviously more advanced and higher level thinking, it seems, to it.
Right.
That, you go up, but that's like if you want a beginner idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It lays it out nice.
Yeah, it's a great, I think, general rule of thumb to help people acclimate themselves to this experience. There are some things that I think can be improved on with the protocols that are in place, but it has really allowed for a lot of people to open up to being able to at least perceive certain things out there in the sky, so to speak, revealing that contact that can start to perceive, usually out there, some laser pointer showing something moving across the sky way out there. But truly, contact is happening inside all the time. And we can allow for that to be an internal contact first. And the communication is always that way as well. But as the perceiving of it, we get groups of people together with mixed different levels of consciousness. And some are coming with not even aware that they're fearful. They would never be able to withstand a ship landing, in these spaces. Yeah. They would run like hell. And other people would want to be in that presence and engage with that entity or entities. And so that conflicting vibration doesn't allow for sometimes the full-on contact that can be happening and will start to happen more and more. So we're getting smaller groups together, smaller groups of people who know the protocols, who've done the work within themselves to raise their vibration, or coming from a place of no fear, who are coming from a place of knowingness of their connection to all things in life. And then those are beings that are having contact. So these smaller pockets is where it's really starting, with the physical, open, face-to-face contact that will then become bigger and grander. So
you got to take me and my wife out. We got to try that.
Absolutely. I just recently started forming a group.
I want to see.
Yes.
And it's one of those things, and I feel like it's Santa Claus or some shit. Like you won't see it if you don't believe, and you won't believe if you don't see it.
Well, this whole idea is really inverted also. Yeah, I know. Seeing as believing is actually the opposite. It truly is. Believing is seeing.
Yeah.
And this is, again, part and parcel with this idea of our taking our power back and understanding our creatorship. Because when you know it, it becomes. So it's kind of like if I said, can you go over there and pick up that quarter, right? You wouldn't be thinking your way over there and going, how do I pick up? What if something happens between here and you just walk over and pick up the quarter? Yeah. And this is the analogy I'm giving for this understanding, because when knowingness is there, then you start to have this reflection show up for you. Now,
I think the average person has such a hard time wrapping their head around that.
Yeah, especially if you're in this idea of like
somebody who's not experienced, who's not read in it.
Right. Things happen to me. I have no control over my circumstances.
Exactly.
Right. And I understand it because I've been there. We've all been there in that some sense to feel like helpless, like we can't create, or how could I have any effect on my reality with my thoughts? Really? Yeah. But yet, if you start talking about small things, you start talking about, hey, did you know that you actually, helped yourself heal that much faster with the accelerated rate because you started saying, I am well, I'm healing, I'm better. And you've also we've all got somebody we know of that is that person that's like, I'm sick all the time. Life sucks. Everything around me is so drama.
It's like manifesting bad things.
And then,
just manifesting bad shit all the time.
Sure. And so then you see that whole web just get tangled within themselves. And people, everybody has somebody they know that's like that, right? Where drama just ensues around them, negativity, and they're just becoming a volcano of negative thoughts and emotions. And then, of course, they have
the
nothing.
Evidence is there if you think about it.
The universe supports you all the time.
Everyone can look around their lives and kind of see the evidence of that.
Sure.
Even in just manifesting and positive thinking and stuff like that.
Yeah. So even on the simple, basic level.
Simple as you want to make it.
Right.
Like that could even help your just regular life. So you don't care about having any contact or anything like that.
Yeah.
But just even in your regular life, that seems like a better way to live.
Yeah.
Is thinking positively, bringing good things, expecting good things.
But the real caveat here is it's so easy to say, yes, yes, yes. Oh, yeah, I create my reality. Yeah, I get it,
But actually do it.
But when you have something show up that you don't prefer, then we go, oh, I didn't create that. No. That's somebody else.
It's bad luck.
Somebody, bad luck or superstition or somebody's got juju out for me.
Yeah.
And the thing is when we start to take ownership of those things, we start to understand how we create that, even though we're not aware we're creating by default, right? We're creating unconsciously a lot of the time. And we start to move into this idea of creating consciously. We take ownership of those things. Now we start moving into an empowered state of being where these things happen. Now we start saying, all right. So there's a lot that goes with this idea of being an empowered person, because when you raise your vibration, that's a natural thing that happens.
Yeah.
You move from being a victim to empowered.
What would you like to kind of round up everything?
Yeah.
And two final things I want to get out of you.
Yeah.
What is something you could direct? So to understand, once again, we talked about Greer and stuff, but is there a book, YouTube video, something that you could direct someone to that they could just maybe explore it a little bit more themselves to understand?
Absolutely.
What would you say is the easiest beginner way to start understanding this? Like, what could they go consume or watch or listen to?
Yes. So I would say two things. There's external sources of information that I would recommend those who are interested in wanting to learn more, and I will give some sources for that. And then there's the internal source, and the internal source happens through your own connection through as we mentioned, following your passions.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Because that puts you in the channeling state.
Yeah.
It puts you in a state of excitement. And without that, if you're doing drudgery, if you're having where you're drained at the end of the day, you are not on a vibrational frequency to match these types of frequencies that they are giving out. So you will not perceive those things. And this is a law of the universe. You cannot perceive what you're not the vibration of. Yeah. This goes right in hand with the law of attraction. So it's very important to follow your passion. There are many different races that are attempting, and they are contacting humans right now. So meditation is one way internally that you can start connecting with that. You will be given all the tools you'll need. And if you are going to be connecting with a specific race of beings, that everyone has connections to different particular races that they're connected with, then those will come forth in your reality now. So all appointments have already been made, so to speak, before this, and I use this word before very loosely, this lifetime experience. So we've already been like, all right, if I'm going to come into awareness of this, then I'll set that up for myself.
Yeah.
Beyond the veil.
Yeah.
So we set up, who we're going to be born to and all these things, and that this awareness will come in. So meditate, do things that you love to do, take care of your health, because your vibration is important as well. So if your health is low in vibration, you're putting all kinds of low vibrational things in your body that holds your vibration down. So drink a lot of pure water, exercise, deep breathe a lot. That brings oxygen to your brain, and oxygen is a key element in raising your awareness. Yeah. So without that, you're just existing on very low levels. So these are tools, you could say, permission slips to assist you in being able to make that connection internally.
Yeah.
Externally, I would recommend everybody check out bashar.org. Bashar is an entity from the Sasani civilization.
Spell that?
BASHAR.org.
Okay.
And there is an experiment going on right now with humanity. It's called the Interstellar Social Experiment.
Okay.
And this interstellar, you could say it's a federation of different races that are comprised of seeing if humanity is ready to accelerate themselves to a faster and quicker open contact. In other words, the way we're going, so to speak, on this timeline, there's a momentum happening, and the probabilities would be
like a progress bar.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And so because there is no the future, everything's based on probabilities and possibilities. And so we're shifting all the time to different possibilities based on what we decide and what we think and what we do. So as a collective, we're going down a timeline where within a few years, we're really looking at some major open contact scenarios.
Is that what they will see on that website?
So what they will see is the experiment of, they can learn about what the experiment is about. They can take part in it, taking physical action, contacting their governments, being a voice, being heard, voting for those officials that are running for office. This is also very important. To choose to vote for those that are on a very clear path of disseminating and disclosing this truth about we are not alone in the universe, that extraterrestrials have not only been here for a long time and have been interactive with our society as a whole for many, 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 many millennia, but even more so since, you could say, the 1947 incident and beyond. And so much of this is related to another topic that Dr. Stephen Greer is very adept about, and I'll leave that for another subject regarding technology.
Yeah.
But this idea of why that occurred now and why all of this drip is turning into a now stream, and why it's important that we as everyday humans start to integrate this information is it's being tested, so to speak. So this is what this experiment is about. If the humans will actually take physical action, which is how we ground things in this reality. It's not just by wishing it to be so.
So is it like a petition, or is it just like...
It's a series of experiments. It's a series of actionable steps that can be taken for those. Again, it's not anything that anyone has to do. It's simply a choice for those, if they wish to participate, can assist our whole collective right now in this time to accelerate becoming part of an interstellar society where we also are, you could say, citizens of planet Earth, now working with other beings in a very open way with all kinds of things, trade, technology, awareness. Right now, it's got to be all in the background because we as a collective haven't quite reached that vibrational state. So we're assisting on an individual level for anyone, who's on that path already just by being. But we can accelerate this if you take actionable steps. So what is being given through the Interstellar Alliance of Worlds that has created and composed these actionable steps every single month, go to bashar.org. You can see it all there. If you wish to participate, you will be able to participate. And you can find out a lot of information, see if it resonates with you.
So you think that's a good first place to start?
Yes.
For someone, a beginner that's like, man, I've been hearing a lot about this. I just want to learn more.
If somebody is just at the state where they're not sure that extraterrestrial life exists, I would say don't start there. Okay. That's for those who are on the path.
Where did they start if
already.
They're not sure?
I would say look at Dr. Stephen Greer's work. There's a tremendous amount of overwhelming
documentaries.
Evidence.
I mean, he's got they put together great
Not just the documentaries, but check out his website. There are thousands upon thousands of whistleblower testimonies from CIA officials. I'm saying these words carefully and confidently now because I know they're buzzwords out there. But I think in this day and age that we can confidently talk about this thing because it's just been so prevalently talked about on all platforms now.
Yeah.
We know there's ideas of people working in these structures that have come out and talked about it and shared their story.
Yeah.
Now, let that be for the individual who's wanting more information to see if that resonates with them. I'm not here to impose any truth. Everyone has to distill that within themselves. No one can say, here's truth. You have to distill it within yourself to own it. So go there. There's a tremendous amount of information for those who are just starting out on this path of what is extraterrestrial life? Do we really exist? What's going on? Because there's platforms like Gaia TV that have a tremendous amount of...
to subscribe to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of documentaries out there that they can watch that are very enlightening, you could say, that would help because it's all tied in with consciousness, metaphysics.
There's definitely something.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on Gaia TV the other night and we were looking at this guy who was like, sounded like a legit dude and he had he was going into different times and learning things from himself. Have you heard of that?
Yes. And there are several.
So he was like, I want to learn how to play piano.
Mm-hmm.
And he would fucking jump
yes.
to go find the hymn that plays piano in some other fucking reality. And then he would come back and play some piano.
It's phenomenal because that's weird. Actually mining your Akashic records, what we term these big old term out there, Akashic records, it's not actually out there. It's in there. It's in your DNA.
There's just so much we don't fucking know. It almost makes me anxious of how much we don't fucking know, because everything you've said, and then there's these other layers of it, and it's so hard to categorize.
Right.
It's so hard to and I think we want to do that. We want to categorize well, this is ghost, and this is aliens, and this is fucking fortune tellers, and this is psychics, and this is that, and this is that. And I don't think we know enough about any of them to categorize.
Exactly. What we're doing, actually.
There's just a bunch of weird shit we don't know going on, and I think being open to it and understanding.
Yeah.
Like the first thing we opened up with this was you're like, this isn't real. It's science is showing us these little glimpses into things that maybe we shouldn't be so confident that we already have it figured out.
Exactly.
I think that's the big fucking
what makes us think that the physics of the way we think work in this so-called world, or even this quadrant of the universe or galaxy, that our physics is going to be the same as another area of so-called space. That's in a way kind of a supreme arrogance. But I think if we keep an open mind and we start to understand how things become more fused together, it's not separate. It's not, isolated, that things are actually merged, that there's a connectivity to all things.
Yeah.
This is what's happening in our consciousness, actually, as a collective, is that we're starting to understand how our connectedness is all things, not separative, not isolated as we thought.
Yeah.
And so the reflection then is, of course, galactic consciousness. Of course, we are aspects of ourself and all these areas of life. And now we start to have this reflection. So these beings are many, many thousands. You could say there are over 400,000 different races, you could say, that look pretty much like humans just in this quadrant of the galaxy.
That's
alone.
Weird.
Over 400,000. And many of them are parked in our atmosphere, above the earth, just observing. We don't see them all, but sometimes we're getting leaks in through different photos and videos and things like that. But they are all here witnessing this shift, because humanity itself.
Did you say witnessing this shit?
I didn't. I hope I didn't say that.
No. Just to be funny. They see all this stuff going on, and they're like,
that's true. Actually, that's probably a very true concept.
Motherfuckers.
They just witness this shit.
These motherfuckers. Wait, what are they doing now?
They're witnessing all this shit. I should enunciate better. Shift.
Well, I think a lot of people could agree with the latter.
That's almost as hard to say as
the
depth.
way shit goes with the government and every other goddamn thing, people just be like, okay, whatever. Somebody else figure this out.
Yeah.
We can't do this. Aliens, come on in.
Yes.
Give us a hand. Well, I thank you for coming on today. This was really enlightening.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Really good. And hopefully, some people out there can get some knowledge of this and a little more understanding. And we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And to the audience out there, thanks for tuning in. Stay out of trouble. We'll see you in church. The Redacted Podcast is produced by myself, Matt Bender, and my wife, Pamela Bender. Make sure to go out there and give us a like, a share it with your friends, rate us. Every little bit helps. Thanks for tuning in.